Hello and welcome to the Holy Fool podcast. Holy Fool is a community of artists and patrons in Denver, Colorado, devoted to keeping all things in common. We especially want to support working musicians who are not yet financially self-sufficient. We do that through sharing best practices, relational and communal support and encouragement. We love to highlight songwriters and bands that we really love. So we're very excited today to have our buddy Tim Foreman. You may know him from San Diego rock band Switchfoot. He's also got a tremendous solo project called Bongo Chico, which put out an album. And so thank you so much for being here, Tim. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, totally, man. Also, I want to welcome Daniel, who's in A Place for Owls. He is my co-host for this week. Welcome, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's great to be here.
Totally. Well, Tim, I just want to say thanks for being a really good songwriter and being somebody who my impression of you, just from the little bit that we've interacted, is that not only do you know how to write songs and you know how to make music that's really good, but you've also kept, unless you're faking, and this is mistaken, but like you've kept a love of the creative process and a love of making music, which is so refreshing to me personally, because I've met so many guys and gals who have been in the music industry for, 10, 20 plus years, who have just let themselves get a little cynical and a little sort of like your soul and your joy gets chipped away. But my impression of you, man, is that you seem to still like being in a band and you seem to still like writing songs and going on tour, man. So thank you for doing the music.
Oh, man, thanks. That is true. I absolutely love being in a band. I love playing music. I love writing songs. I love the fact that, you pick up a guitar and you just don't know what's going to happen. It's different every time. And that childlike curiosity, that every time you pick up a guitar, you could write the best song or the worst song, and it kind of doesn't matter,
Yeah.
Let's just to see where this thing goes.
Can you talk about your creative process, maybe some of your practices? How have you kept that sort of like love of songwriting and writing and recording and all that?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I like to do is play instruments that I'm not good at. So I'm a bass player, right? So when I write a song, I don't write on a bass. It's not a very inspiring instrument chordally to write on. So I think, going to a piano or a guitar, it awakens that child in you where you're not going to familiar places. I think I'm still enough of a hack on the guitar that every time I pick it up, I kind of am like, what is this thing? And I get surprising results that way. And I think if I get too familiar with an instrument, then I move on to a different one. And
Mm.
I think that kind of keeps everything feeling accidental. I think that's part of the process for me of writing songs is kind of stumbling upon things that you didn't know were there.
So I love the idea of, picking the instrument up, finding the song, that sort of thing. I'm curious if also outside of like instrument music time, are you like a voice memo guy? Do you get little riffs, little tunes, and like you have to capture them in that moment?
Yeah, yeah. I have a ridiculously long list of voice memos that make sense only to me. It might be a couple words, or it might be usually it's a melody. And then I have like a shorthand way of like trying to communicate some of the basics of that riff or idea so it'll make sense to me later, like kind of give myself the tonic of whatever key I'm imagining it in, and maybe like a beat that kind of gives me some tempo guidance.
Mouth drum to the phone.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like a week later. I'm like, what? What was I? What was that? Who is
Yeah.
that guy?
Yeah.
I actually also write a lot of songs while I'm like not at an instrument, and those are sometimes the better ones. I surf a lot, so like out in the water, there's like a rhythm to paddling, and I've written songs that way. Or I like to hike, I like to walk, get outside. I think sometimes there's something to be said for like, you can sit down and write a song and say, I'm going to write a song today. And sometimes that works, but sometimes that's too like focused and on the nose. And I like to give my brain something else to kind of like get the nervous energy working on. And then I don't know, the child inside the back of your brain is like chewing on something else.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I write lyrics that way in particular, like while I'm driving or walking, or just kind of like, well, my body's doing one thing, my brain is free to just kind of like create.
It's often when you get caught off guard by a line or a lyric or a melody that's when it's really satisfying. I like that surprise and childlikeness that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're trying to have your antenna up to what is kind of in the ether around you. You want to be like paying attention to that and not too like focused on the internal like effort of writing a song.
Tell me a little bit about why you write songs.
So I really love chords. I love the way music makes me feel. And I think that's why I write songs, is the feeling that it gives me. And sometimes it's a surprising thing. Sometimes you'll write a lyric that is happy and it just sounds so incredibly sad. And I love that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that collision of like, I don't know why this makes me feel this. Why is that? And I hope I never know why it makes me feel that. I think that's part of it. It's like a magic trick that works on the magician, where I'm like probably the most amazed of anyone of like, whoa, how did that happen?
Do you have spaces outside of songwriting where you're like, oh, I could make that, or I could do that, or I want to figure that out? Or is it pretty limited to like music is where you express that?
No, I think I'm a curious person. Um, so I love learning and trying new things. I actually just started learning how to sail for that same reason. I just think it's good to keep doing things that you feel like you suck at.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's important. Again, getting back to like the child is like when you're a kid, you don't think about like, oh, I'm good or I'm not good at something. You're just kind of like, oh, that was fun. What's this? So I want to keep doing that as I get older.
So you've been in the same band for what, like 25 years? How long has Switchfoot been together?
Yeah, since I was in high school. So yeah, it's like 25 years.
Yeah. What? And again, I get the sense from when I have watched you guys play together and just like hang out together is like you still very much enjoy each other's company. You enjoy the musical chemistry. You seem to be having a blast, which again is just so refreshing to me. What do you think is your favorite part about being in a band?
There's a lot that I love. I think bands are amazing. Like I'm fascinated in other bands. Like how do other bands make it work? Because it's kind of like I mean in some ways it's like this car crash that like how is this possible? You have all these different opinions,
Right.
ideas, how do you actually come to some sort of a consensus and make something where the sum of the parts is greater than the individuals? That fascinates me. I love documentaries of other bands because I feel like it's different for every band.
Hmm.
And even within our band, it's different album to album. Like what worked last album probably isn't going to work for this one. And so you're constantly kind of trying to figure out how to collide all of these opinions into something beautiful. And then that will forever fascinate me. I mean, it's challenging for sure. My brother and I, having a brother in the band, we are always going to be honest with each other,
Mm-hmm.
which that's a nice way of putting it. But the hard part of that is like, yeah, we fight. I mean, that's what brothers do, I think we've learned to respect the fight, that like that's actually a good thing. That means that you're still invested. The moment one of you is like, whatever, like I don't care, then you've lost the band, and I think having a brother in the band, it forces you to be okay with like staying in it and fighting for something that's better than maybe either of you initially imagined.
Mm.
And I think we all kind of have that closeness now and honesty, probably not to the degree that John and I have,
Right.
that's a special thing that we've been practicing fighting with each other since we were born,
Yeah.
but it allows everyone to kind of like, yeah, let's have opinions. Let's care.
I feel like with songwriting, especially in a band setting, it's like you have to be so willing to bring something to the table that you 100% believe in. And it's like, melodies and stuff, especially, it's like it comes from you, like from your body. You're giving this thing up of like, hey guys, we should try this. And if you want the band to work, you also have to be 100% willing to be like, no, that's not the part. Sorry. And that's really hard.
Yeah. It takes so much trust, right? Because it's a vulnerable thing. I think you have to get to a place where you are fully comfortable with having the dumbest opinion in the room,
Mm.
and then you kind of get out of the way of your own ideas. And once you kind of get that level of comfort within the band where it's like, yeah, of course, like we've all had good ideas and bad ideas, and like best idea wins. There's no, if you can get the ego, like leave the ego at the door and be okay with failure and okay with, yeah, your idea may work today, might not work tomorrow. That's something that we are continually learning how to do, but we have gotten better at that through the years. An observation that I've made throughout our musical journeys, the best musicians that I've met along the way, worked with, are usually the ones that are the freest with their ideas. They're not self conscious. And that kind of allows them to just, they're very in tune with their instincts of like, oh, I love that. I don't love that. And at the end of the day, like as an artist, that's kind of your most valuable thing is
Mhm.
what you love and what you don't love. Like those are very important things to pay attention to. And when you have ego involved, it kind of muddies the water, you know? So being able to kind of like just stay really in touch with the way things make you feel in a band setting, where you trust the people around you. That's it's kind of the key to all of it.
We always kind of joke that Daniel is the hook police in our band. Oftentimes, I'm the progenitor of the structure of the song, like the main basic lyrics and,
Huh?
the chord progression and all that sort of stuff. And I
I love
also,
that.
yeah, I try to, I try to write, 10 songs to keep like 2 or 3, right? And Daniel is always like, I don't know if there's a catchy part in there, man. Where's the hook? Yeah.
You love something memorable. You want something that people are going to hear, and it doesn't have to be the catchiest thing ever, but like something that you remember.
Yeah.
I'm always
Yeah.
pushing for that.
The hook police. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, we've been friends for like 20, me and Daniel for like 20 years. And so we have that level of trust, I think, where when we first started trying to write songs together years ago, I think I got more butthurt about it than I do now.
Huh?
Because it does feel
Yeah.
so personal. It's like your
Yeah.
baby, right?
Right. I mean, having 2 keepers for every 10, you said, that's pretty good ratio.
That,
I feel like we're more like, we just write so many songs,
yeah.
and part of it is like, the journey of writing a song is worth it in and of
Hmm.
itself. It's a worthy endeavor, and it's a great way to waste an afternoon. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
Uh-huh.
There's no time wasted. You went somewhere, you discovered something. Maybe the thing you found wasn't the thing you want to share around the world for the next couple of years on an album, but it was a meaningful journey. And so we do that constantly. So our ratio is maybe more like 10-1 or 20-1. So you got a good batting average.
Well, my caliber of hits is not necessarily the same as your caliber of hits.
It's funny though, like we a lot of times will keep a song off of a record and then put it on the next one or the one after, and it ends up being like our favorite on that record. That happens quite a bit. So there's something to be said for just kind of timing of an idea too. It's like songs can find their place.
I want to dig into something you said about sort of trying to reinvent or rediscover your process for every album that you guys make. Can you put some meat on that for me? Like, give me some examples of what sort of tricks or practices you've used to like try to get back to that childlike, feeling really fresh space when trying to write for a record.
The goal of writing a song is sometimes the wrong intention for me to arrive at a good song. Like I do it, like we all do it. But sometimes it's better for me to be like, oh, I just found this instrument and I just want to see what it feels like. And then, like, inevitably, good songs come out of that discovery. I got a plug in the other day that was like this soft synth kind of weird thing. And I was just like, let's see what this does. And I just
Yeah.
started, and it like ended up being a really fun song. I think those kind of were like, the goal isn't writing a song, the goal is something else. But the side quest is like a song while you're doing the other thing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that John and I do quite a bit because I think the child in you is like, oh, what does this thing do? You're not thinking about writing a song, but the song just happens. I think another thing that we do a lot is switch instruments or like, so we're a 5-piece right now as a band, but sometimes it's like, yeah, but let's write as a 2-piece or a 3-piece or, play around with that. John and I write quite a bit, just him and I. But as a band, sometimes it's fun to be like, okay, rotate like 2 guys in the control room, 3 guys in the tracking room, 10 minutes on like an idea. And then it's like, okay, everyone rotate again. And so you have some ears that are just listening, not everyone trying to create at the same time.
Yeah.
I think just different things that kind of like are disruptive to what you normally do, because it's interesting that there's the craft part of writing a song is like efficiency. Like anything you do repeatedly, you get better at. That's like the craft part of it. But then the artistry part of it is more of like the kid that doesn't know what he's doing that stumbles upon something great, and those tend to be the better things. So how do you hold those in balance? Because obviously you want to improve at your craft, but you don't want to create rivets where the water runs down the same trail every time. You want to dig new streams for the water to run down. So those are the 2 things that I think we talk about a lot, John and I, is like, how do you balance those out? You've got the critic and the child. The critic is like the craftsman that's just very good at like playing the right notes, and he knows what the next chord should be. And then the child doesn't know any of that, and you need them both.
Have you experienced it as a challenge, like being in the music industry? And I think of like kind of the Nashville sort of efficiency model of making music versus the inner child. Have you ever found like, has that kind of come head to head, or have you guys like learned enough to where you just know to make space for it? Yeah, I'd be curious how you kind of balance that.
Yeah, I think we're fighting with it constantly. But like, for example, with this solo project that I just did, Bongo Chico, that was my first time writing like intentionally for myself. You know, all the songs that I've written and released up till now have been with my brother, with him singing. So not even writing for my own voice. So in that space, John's got so much creative energy coming at me. I'm the critic and he's more the child. And he's bouncing things off me and I'm like refining them and sending them back to him. That's my role primarily within Switchfoot. So the critic's like very strong, like those muscles are like finely tuned. And I had to like get away from that guy. I had to find ways of like shutting the critic up because the child thinks everything's wonderful. The critic thinks everything's terrible. You're like, oh, that sounds like I've heard that before. Oh, that sounds like whatever it is. So I had to like get that guy out of the room and let the child just kind of play and then bring the critic back later on in the process. It was really hard for me to do. I think one of the things I learned was the for me, the child's more awake in the morning, and then the critic's like his roles maybe later on in the day, like discovering those things.
Yeah.
Just trying to wake up and kind of journal and like be as much in the child mindset as possible before the critic takes the wheels.
When you're childlike, there's a more dreamlike quality to what you're doing. Things don't have to necessarily make logical sense for them to make intuitive, sort of emotional sense to you. Yeah, that's real good. Well, I want to ask a little bit about some of the struggles that you face. So we have friends that are sort of on all levels of scale for songwriters, bands, projects. We play with a lot of bands in Denver where it's like, I'm super green. This is my first project. I haven't done a tour yet. And we've been lucky enough to have a few friends like you who've been doing this for a while. It isn't quite your first rodeo, right? Our definition for working musician is pretty broad. It's anybody who's trying to take seriously the craft of songwriting, trying to record stuff, put it out there, and be ambitious about it, right? And that can mean that you make no money from doing music and still be a working musician. And that can mean that you have your primary source of income be from music, right? So struggles are all different, but I've found from talking to enough musicians now that some of the struggles are pretty much the same at all levels of scale too. So what do you think some of your current struggles as a working musician, what are some of the barriers between you and making music in the way that you feel drawn to and called to make?
Yeah, it's such an interesting time. right now as a musician. I mean, it might be encouraging to know that it's always been an interesting time to be a musician.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in my lifetime, believe it or not, even when we, put our first album out in the late 90s, there were already people talking about like, oh, the music industry was amazing 10 years ago. And it's kind of been like that the entire time we've been doing music is like, oh man, it used to be so great. I mean, it's funny because like you look at where the music industry is now for a young artist compared to the late 90s, I guess there's just different challenges, Back then, there was like a lot of gatekeeping, like to be able to record an album and then to be able to release that album and have other people hear it. Like you had to get through so many gates, right? You had to, first of all, like earn enough money, like bussing tables or something to get studio time, which was really expensive. And then the idea of like, now how do you get that song out to outside the walls of your bedroom? You know, virtually impossible. Now gatekeeping's kind of gone away in that sense, right? Like we've all heard some of our favorite albums recorded in bedrooms, which is amazing. I love that. So as far as like, it's a great time to make amazing music. It's a great time to release music because you can actually push one button and anyone in all over the world can hear it. That's novel and unique in human history. That said, streaming services being what they are, and there's so much noise. And now with AI, I mean, it's just like, I think the sum of all those things makes up an environment that is now probably the most challenging that I've experienced, for artists to make a living doing what they love. I think there's more people doing it now than there used to be. There's so many bites getting taken out of that pie now that it's really hard to make it work. I think, in our experience as a band, we've seen the costs of touring go up. It's interesting because, you talk to like your neighbors and people that aren't in the music business, and there's so much news about how the touring industry is exploding because you've got these mega tours, the Taylor Swifts of the world, where it's like, yeah, those tickets are crazy expensive.
Right.
But meanwhile, we're still selling the same price ticket that we always have, and inflation being what it is. And there's lots of people playing stadiums now, which is, I think, unique. That's hasn't really been like a normalized thing until recently. But, those of us playing clubs and rock shows, it's pretty grindy out there. So yeah, I think there's challenges. I think the good thing is there is a lot of amazing music being made, and I think there's people taking care of each other. I think feel the camaraderie. I think maybe more than other times, it doesn't feel as cutthroat. It feels like people are rooting for each other, because I think if you're an artist and you're in it, you're probably in it for good reasons. Like no one's grinding it out in clubs because they want to get rich. They're chasing a feeling, an emotion, something that makes life worth living. And so I think there's good camaraderie that's coming out of that.
So I know your boy Jet, he has a project called Jetty, and he seems to be a serious musician as well. From just the little that I've interacted with him, he seems to take the songwriting stuff seriously. He's done a few tours by this point, right? When they came through Denver most recently, they stayed at Daniel's house and had a great time connecting with them. What advice have you given Jet about how to keep your soul and keep your spirit high and up while trying to make music and be in the music industry, whatever that actually means?
Yeah. First of all, the great thing about being a dad is whatever you think you're going to teach your kids, they're probably going to teach you like double that, you know? That might be conservative. So, yeah, he does come to me and ask me questions, and I've, given him advice, of course, but I've been very inspired by him and his courage and bravery to put himself out there, to be honest in his songwriting, and then to get up on a stage and say those things and sing those things. And so that's been very inspiring to me. I think my advice to him has been along the lines of opening himself up to chasing, those true things that are inside of him to say, surrounding him with the safety of like, yeah, it's okay. whatever you're feeling, it's okay to feel that. And it's also fantastic to put that into a song. And you can decide later, if that song's just for you or for other people. But I think to like fully embrace your identity as an artist, whether that's an artist as a career or an artist as a lifelong pursuit, along with some other thing that pays the bills. I think like recognizing, no, you are an artist, that's in you, that makes you, it makes the colors around you richer. That makes your life, it gives you fulfillment and meaning. That's something that you need to be doing throughout your life, regardless of what else the rest of it looks like. I think, I mean, that is like for all of us, that's like a very existential question is like, I'm an artist. What does that mean? Does that mean that's how I'm paying the bills, or does that mean I'm paying them some other way? And like extrapolating your identity with all of the traffic in that intersection of identity and commerce, artistry. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, I definitely was, whether it was implicit or explicit, I was taught a lesson growing up that like my primary identity is what I do for work and what I make money doing, was sort of an expectation that whether I think my parents or the adults around me meant to do that, it definitely was like, hey, this is your primary self, is like yourself when you're monetizing your labor.
Right.
And I think I internalized that for, decent ways. I was like, well, I care about other people. I care about the world. And so I've like done interesting work in like the nonprofit sector. And like, there's been some cool results from trying to find an outlet for what is my identity and what is that healthy identity. But it's also, for me, come with a tremendous amount of angst and insecurity, because if your primary identity is waiting for somebody else to pay you to do that thing, or to say you're good at that thing, even if they don't give you money, right? Then like there's something almost like I can never actually feel satisfied in that then, because I never make enough money, as much money as like I would want to make doing cool things, whether it's music or social good or working a for-profit day job or whatever. But it's also like, it's an inherently external validation that you get, whether it's a paycheck or praise, right?
Advice that my dad gave my brother and I when we were first kind of like trying to do the band thing. He was like, don't believe the hype, whether it's good or bad. And at the time it was like, small town band, like you get some articles in the newspaper, maybe you go on like the Sunday night local radio show, whatever. And it's like, so it's all like kind of positive, right? And it's like, and that's cool. But it was like before all the negative stuff, which is inevitable in any artistic pursuit. It was kind of preemptively like planted that seed of like, don't take the bait, good or bad. And I think that's something I've tried to, getting back to things I've tried to pass on to Jet, and also tried to live out myself, is like, are you going to allow that to define you? And there's so many things that you can allow to do that for you. It could be good and bad press, or it could be, like you mentioned, like that song didn't stream, that show didn't sell.
Right.
There's a million external ways to kind of like allow other metrics to validate who you are and what you do. Because at the end of the day, like your music, that there's so much of you in it, right? Definitely true of A Place for Owls, that the music you make is very personal. That's the music I make too. I think that's music that we're drawn to. And so you put your soul into this thing, and then it gets driven over by a truck, and there's all these things that happen to it, and you're like, oh, that's painful. I think that's something we talk about quite a bit, is you have to be willing to kind of put yourself out there, but then also define what success means, maybe preemptively before all of that happens. Like, okay, this may do well, this may not. Let's take that out of the equation for a second. And like, what is success? Well, I wrote this song at 3 a.m. and it made me feel something I'd never felt before. Like, wow, that's already successful, you know?
Mhm.
And then to not allow anything else to kind of like reframe what that success was. So for my Bongo Chico record, when I finished it, we had a little listening party here at the studio. There's like 9 of us, 10 of us. And we'd never done this for any of our albums before, where we like Switchfoot albums or anything else. We just turn the lights down and listen to the record from track 1 through track 12 and eyes closed. And I was so honored that my friends would do that. First of all, that's an
Yeah.
hour of time to
Yeah.
just kind of like fully immerse in music. And it was such a meaningful moment for me. I was like, it doesn't even matter, the record could not even come out and I would feel fulfilled just from this night, you know? And I kept kind of trying to remind myself as the record was getting ready to come out, like, okay, I already feel fulfilled.
Mm.
The songs already do the things to me that I was hoping they would do. And now they did them for my closest friends as well. And numbers are kind of meaningless at that point.
Yeah, I think doing some work to like protect that initial vision of success is important, even if it's like just journal about it or just even go back to like, hey, why did we do this in the beginning? Because the
Hmm.
goalposts really do shift. And it's telling that like if you're good at something creative, like if you're crafty or you work on something you show someone else, oftentimes the only way they know to compliment it is like, oh, you should sell that. Oh, you should open an Etsy shop. You should,
Right.
like that's our way in our culture of saying like, maybe you could make money on that if you tried really hard. And that's like all we
Right.
have. And if we keep chasing that line and keep going after it, it's like, you're never going to be happy.
Yeah. It's funny. I look back on the successes that Switchfoot has had, and we never saw them when they were happening. They were only visible to us in the rearview mirror. And it didn't matter what it was, playing Madison Square Gardens. But we're like the second band on the bill, and Beyonce is headlining. And, like, there's always like, we always felt small no matter what was happening in the
Right.
excitement around us, you can allow that to happen if that's the way you're allowing success to be defined. So yeah, I think trying to separate external factors from how the music, like why you wrote the song, how it made you feel. If you can kind of keep that definition of success in focus, the rest of the stuff can fall where it may.
That's good, man. That's great. So one of the things that I've just tried to figure out is like a lot of these struggles that we have are mental. And a lot of these struggles are like either mindset or like you can get sideways really quick in your spirit if you
Hmm.
don't sort of guard yourself. And one of the things that I've found helpful in that is having a community of people around me. And that's primarily found in the other guys in A Place for Alice, my band. And we do a lot of like care for each other. We always joke that band practice is like 90 minutes of group therapy and then like 45 minutes hot and heavy of actual music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I'm sort of grieved by is how, because the financial aspects of making music are harder and harder to make money, I see my friends because they're looking at the spreadsheet of how can I eke out a small and modest living from doing music. And that seems to push more and more of my friends towards solo projects or singer-songwriter stuff. And that's beautiful. If that's a primary like form of music making that you feel really drawn to, if that's a creative or an artistic sort of decision or a relational decision that you want to hold it pretty close to the vest, like every instrument is played by you, that's
Yeah.
great. But
Right.
one of the things that sort of breaks my heart a little bit is I see the financial aspect pushing more and more people away from the band and starting a
Yeah.
band and being in a band. I wondered if you just had any thoughts on either from your own experience making a solo record. It sounds like that was, I hope, healthy for you to do, right?
Yeah.
But like, or friends that you've seen that have sort of gotten isolated in their music making and maybe as a result gotten a little bit sideways in their spirit or their mindset. But if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. I definitely think that there's a lot more solo music being made because of the practical financial climate. I hadn't really thought about that until you said it, but it's true. I was just talking with a friend of mine who just finished a band tour. And he was like, man, I think next time I'm going to try and just kind of do the solo thing because there's kind of not enough meat on the bone. And I've grown up, this is kind of related. Grew up in a scene where playing to tracks was like really frowned upon. Like
Right.
we've never played to tracks, which is kind of like a dinosaur mentality nowadays. But I've even had to check my pride at the door on that one of like, well, the financial climate is you can't always afford to have 5 band members on stage and 5 mouths to feed, and I think I've become more open-minded of like, well, people need to do whatever they can do to make it work, and I'm not gonna judge them for, throwing the bass on tracks if that's the only way they can afford to tour. Like, I get it. It's
Right.
tough, but yeah, there's something special about, you mentioned the group therapy of a band, and going out and, grinding it out solo is, a pretty dark road for a lot of people. I think for some people, they're wired that way, and that's fine. I think for most of us, the musical experience is this communal thing, and then being forced to be an island out on the road because you can't afford to have other members with you on tour. That's a really sad reality. I think mental health is such a talked about issue amongst creatives right now. You can't have a real conversation with another musician or creative without talking about mental health. And I think there's so much that factors into that. I think a big factor is that if you are selling your songs, at some level, you're working for a tech company. Modern day serfdom. You're working the land that you don't own. You're working the land of Instagram, of TikTok, whatever it is. You don't own it. You don't own your followers. You don't own that, but you're working the land that they're benefiting from. And meanwhile, there's so much mental health decline in that space, in social media. You're also working for the tech companies of streaming platforms, so it's if you're out there doing it on your own because that's the only way you can afford to do it, I get it. I feel you. And but make sure you still have people in your lives that you can talk to, because I think for us that's definitely been the only way we've been able to stay sane and do it as long as we have, and to still enjoy it. You mentioned that we do still love what we do. We're not jaded. We're not complaining about it, but we have people in our lives, and, it's primarily our band members, that we talk about these things. We talk about boundaries with, social media, and yeah, you're working the land. I get it. You have to do it, to promote your art, but there's got to be boundaries in there. That's a very fluid conversation that we're talking about on the tour bus and in the van, whatever it is, on a pretty regular basis, whether that's like passing the ring around from one to the other, it's like you're sharing the ring, taking the ring to Mordor, It's like, okay, I'll
Share the
carry it.
load.
Yeah, I'll carry it for 2 weeks, then pass it on to someone else. Whatever it is that makes it work for you. So yeah, if you're doing it solo, I think it would still be more than ever important that you have people in your life that you can have real conversations about mental health and how you're doing.
Almost makes it sound like the warning could be like, hey, if you're doing it solo, you might be shifting the cost, right? So you might make on the
Mhm.
front end a little more, but you just might need to be aware that the cost is going to come out somewhere else, and to like plan ahead, be aware of that. Like you said, kind of have your people in place before you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. For us as a band, like every season has been unique and different from the previous. And I think, whatever stage you're at, I think being willing to pivot and make course corrections is super important. I think balance, I've heard, is not something that's achieved. It's an act that is continually enacted in real time.
Yeah.
You're looking for balance. You don't find balance, but you're looking for balance. Just because it worked last year doesn't mean it'll work this year. How are you doing? What course corrections do you need to make? From like the business level, but then also the emotional level and also the mental health level.
Mm. You mentioned that you have a sense that there's maybe a greater sense of camaraderie between bands and songwriters now than maybe in previous iterations of doing music. And that's encouraging to me. I've also experienced that too. There's still, there's a lot of jerks out there that you meet that are like self-absorbed
Sure.
and self-obsessed and not generous with their attention or their care. But maybe if you could talk a little bit about what community with other bands and other projects looks like for you. I know that you've got some buddy bands that you like to play with often or collaborate on songs, but what does sort of community building and caring for each other with other bands, other songwriters look like for you guys?
Yeah. Well, just to touch briefly on the camaraderie that I see, I don't see as much gatekeeping as I feel like there used to be. I feel like, because we're dealing with things like algorithms that are changing and no one really knows what it is, I feel like I see a lot more of someone cracks the code, they share it with the community, And it might not be with everyone. They might not go online and go wide with it, but they're gonna like call their people and like
Yeah.
the other band they play with and be like, "Hey, I did this. This worked for me. You should try it." And I think that is beautiful. I think gatekeeping is like the death of a scene. Growing up in San Diego, the scene was never competitive. It was not like back in the day, LA, New York was like competitive. Everyone's kind of like fighting for the one slot. But it felt like in San Diego, everyone was like, if any band from San Diego made it, it was like a win for the whole team. You know
Right.
what I mean? And I see that a little bit more in the scene kind of like across the globe now, at least in the DIY space, but then also like the young band space in general is like, yeah, anyone that can kind of like make something great and push through all the noise, like that's a win for the tribe. So I love that. I applaud that. And I think that is something that should be cultivated and encouraged.
What are some examples of like not being competitive, but being open-handed and careful with each other?
Well, something I want to be better at, that's a good place to start. Something I want to be better at is like just doing check-ins, on people that like we've toured with a lot of bands through the years. And you know how it is. Like sometimes you'll be on tour with a band and you'll see them every day for a week or two. And then 3 years, 5 years goes by and you haven't spoken. I want to be better at like just like the 5 minute phone call or text, whatever it is, of like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Because I think that's what makes this all work and beautiful is like when we truly are a family that's taking care of each other, That's something I'm working on, trying to get better at that because really it doesn't take much. It's like put it on your calendar. That's what I'm starting to do. Is like, okay, like check in with someone on this day that'll pop up and be like, okay, you know, how are you? What's going on? Where
Right.
are you in the world? What's life like for you? And the answers are always surprising. I think you think what kind of someone's going through, and then it's always like, oh wow, yeah, I'm glad we're talking.
And a scene isn't just geography, right? I mean, it's not just like the local scene. It's people you've played with, people who make music like you that you find on the internet. I mean, all of that. That's a scene.
You talk about things that have gotten easier and harder. Like it's gotten easier to stay in touch. So let's take the good when it comes. That's one of the beautiful things about right now is like, yeah, we can stay connected.
Well, I just want to encourage you and praise you. You have been an encouraging presence to me personally and our band. I mean, literally, how we started our relationship is I just added you and Switchfoot, and I didn't even add you. I added John and and the Switchfoot, and I was like, "Hey, listen to Denver emo band A Place for Owls. You might like it." And literally, I think within 90 minutes, you had responded and like, "Hey, I do like this. Thank you so much for sharing it." That was like you treated it like I had given you a gift instead of was bugging you, which was beautiful to me.
That is I think exactly what I'm talking about is like using social media for good and not evil. Like there are genuine friendships and connections amongst the artist community being made constantly. And that was definitely a beautiful one. And I'm forever grateful, for discovering your music through
Yeah.
that tweet, and the friendship that we've been able to form, and we've been able to do shows together.
Yeah.
And I truly love that about this creative community, that, I think we are looking for the good and the beautiful. And when we find it,
Yeah.
it feels special every time.
Yeah. Well, definitely in a lot of ways changed my life. So I appreciate you responding to a random band on twitter.com. Well, do you have any more thoughts on sort of, the emotional core of Holy Fool? What we're trying to do is moving away from competition into community, moving away from being so cutthroat with each other, realizing that you actually may find some of your primary friends, certainly creative collaborators. But if you can just get into, you've talked about that spirit of play and openness and open-handedness, open-heartedness. So that's exactly the sort of thing that we're trying to do with our little community of bands and songwriters that we know in Denver and in the whole Front Range in Colorado. But any other thoughts that are sort of on that theme of helping especially struggling, emerging working musicians?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the scenes that I've seen kind of arise out of seemingly nothing. Back in the 90s, it was like the Seattle thing, and then there was like the Warp Tour thing. In all these things, it's been bands kind of like lifting each other up rather than pushing each other down, because I think for one single band to kind of like poke through, that's like, okay. But for a kind of collection of bands to make a community, a culture that's bigger than all of them, those are like the scenes that really rise above it, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So like the anti-gatekeeping, rooting for each other, not only does it feel good, but I actually think it works,
Uh-huh.
the sum of all the voices making something that's bigger. So I love what you guys are doing.
Mm.
I think it's super important. And yeah, however I can help. I'm excited to cheer you guys on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, talking to us on the podcast is very helpful. Is there anything, Tim, that you would like to promote? I know you put out your Bongo Chico record, but I would just sort of love to open it up to like, what are you excited about creatively that you have going on? Anything that you're looking forward to? Anything that you would like people, listeners? There will be people listening to this that have never checked out Switchfoot or Bongo Chico. So, what would you like to highlight?
Yeah, well, I would be honored for people to check out Bongo Chico. You were asking me how I would describe my music, and emotional postcards was the term that popped into my brain, because in writing these songs, I was chasing uh, emotions, and I realized that these emotions that I was writing, they were feelings that I'd had at different times in my life, whether it was a happy emotion or a sad emotion, and I allowed myself the freedom to just time travel, to just like pull on that emotional thread and be like, okay, verse 1, I'm 10 years old, and this is the story that I'm living, and this is what I'm feeling. Verse 2, now I'm 25 years old and I'm still feeling this same thing. And that kind of became a fun way to time travel through this record and stay fully committed to these feelings. This record sounds like the music that made me fall in love with music in the first place,
Mm,
whether it's the Zombies, like older music, or
yeah,
like newer stuff like Vampire Weekend, like
yeah.
I think just things that are surprising and make me want to play music.
Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of those beautiful Beatles harmonies in it.
Hmm.
And there's something about it that feels timeless in a certain way. It feels like a rock record that could have conceivably come out in the 90s or the 2000s or the 2010s or today, right? Your aspiration to do emotional postcards, I think, was very successful because, especially in 1995, as a song, just like, what's the line about sharing cigarettes or smoking
Death by
cigarettes?
cigarette.
Death, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That got me. That brought me, I know it's your life, but it brought me to a moment in my own life that felt not only nostalgic in a good way, but super meaningful and grounding. You know, because you think back on memories, it's like you've been yourself at every stage of your life, and you do grow and change, and people are dynamic, but there is a core essential me at 8, me at 10, me at 15, me at 25. I'm the same guy, right?
Right.
And so that's the feeling that I got, especially on that 1995 song.
I love that. So yeah, go check out Bongo Chico if you haven't heard it. Since we mentioned it and I'm wearing the shirt, Jetty, also my son's band.
Yeah.
Obviously a big fan. And then Switchfoot, we're working on a new album. We're almost done with it. And it's one of the more aggressive albums that we've ever made.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're very excited about guitars again and riffs, and I think we got bored with them for a little bit, and now we're excited about them again. So
praise be, back to the riffs, man.
Yeah,
Riff Factory. I'm excited to hear aggressive. I'm excited to hear guitar. That's amazing. That's the sort of music that I'm really drawn to. So that's great.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, totally, Tim. Thank you for being on. Daniel, any thoughts or questions?
No, that was awesome, man. We really appreciate your time, and you've given me a lot of little things to think about. So I appreciate that.
It was good to see your faces.
Yes, wonderful to see you. Yeah.
This was super enjoyable, and good to have a living room chat.
Yeah, totally.
What's new with you guys?
We are perennially in like songwriting mode. You know, we kind of have to keep songwriting at the forefront regardless of whatever else is going on.
Yeah.
Because we all have day jobs and spouses, and half of us have kids and various other commitments in life, our process is so slow, and you can get frustrated with that. You can get really angsty, or you can just sort of embrace that, like, I get to do this and I get to write songs with my best friends. And, you know, it's that African proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And so we're in songwriting mode. We've got like songs banked that we recorded like a year ago now, Daniel, and we literally need one more session on them just to like get them done and then get them out in the world. They're all sort of songs that we made postal service style collaboratively with some friends. So we had people do vocal feature or songwriting feature on each one of the songs. And so it's going to be like a little 6-song EP that, God willing, is going to be out at some point early next year.
Epic.
But we're holding it very loosely. It's like, we're not going to die if it's delayed by a month or two.
Yeah.
And then we're writing songs that are now hopefully going to be on the next full-length records. That'll be sort of our thing. At least we've got 6 or 8 songs that we think are good enough that would be the bones, you know, of like a 10 or 12 song record. So that's what we're doing.
Amazing. Well, whenever you feel comfortable sending it, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah,
Whatever
please.
You got.
Yeah, I'll send you some demos. Be gentle and kind. Notable jerkwads, Tim Foreman. Yeah,
It's funny how like it doesn't matter what who you're talking to. Like, whenever someone sends you a demo, there's always the like disclaimers. We all do it, right?
Yeah,
It's like we all know what a demo sounds like.
Yes.
So I absolutely know what a demo sounds like, and you know, I love your songwriting.
Thank you.
I love the band sound, and whatever you want to send, I'd be happy to share my thoughts too. So
dope.
Whatever.
Thank you, Tim. That's awesome. Well, I'm gonna sign us off. I'll do my little thing about Holy Fool at the end.
Cool.
You've been listening to the Holy Fool podcast. Holy Fool is a community of artists and patrons in Denver, Colorado, who strive to hold all things in common. We especially want to support working musicians who struggle financially, who are not yet financially self-sufficient. Our guest this week has been Tim Foreman. Thank you so much, Tim, for being here, sharing your thoughts and your perspective. We appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And my co-host this week has been Daniel. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep. All right. We'll see you guys.